The evil of the devil. We know Satan as the deceiver, the first and greatest enemy of creation, but we also know that once he was the greatest of God's children. So how did a being of direct proximity to the source of all good become so evil, and why? Satan was mighty among the angels, praised by God for his splendor and his wisdom. And surely at first he was good, a direct creation of God, coming from a desire for goodness and beauty. However, the nature of created beings is by nature imperfect, for since they are not the source of goodness, only recipients, they have the possibility of rejecting it. As Father Chad Ripperger noted, the angels had to sacrifice the urge to achieve that greater good of intrinsic being. But what if they refused? Believing they could achieve that by themselves, they could claim equal footing, or perhaps superiority to God, if they believed their achievement was greater due to them earning that ultimate good, rather than being that good from the start. And from this refusal to acquiesce came a growing bitterness, a resentment against the nature of their existence and the nature of God. This frustration, tinged with the eternal desire to prove themselves equal to God, would then twist itself into spite. They were in heaven, in the direct presence of God. There was no time in which they had ignorance of any of God's attributes. They felt his power, saw his glory, understood his goodness. If they rebelled, they would do so in full awareness of what it meant. And still, they chose to disobey. And if one cannot prove themselves equal to a power, they can undermine it. After all, what is the greater action? To build an empire or to destroy it? That is the power of sin. Every sin is a direct attack on the goodness of creation, every minor disobedience making existence more rotten, more tainted and marred, more hurt. As everyone knows, it takes years to build a reputation, but seconds to ruin it. That one bad day can cause years of damage and trauma, with even hundreds of good deeds being unable to heal it fully. This is the power sought, the quicker, easier path to affect creation in ways that cannot be undone. And without the resurrection of Christ, these injuries would never be healed, these people would never be redeemed, and the kingdom of God would forever be overruled by the will of the fallen. But why destroy it all? Surely they could go off and create on their own. Except this is not their purpose. Creation in the physical realm is the domain of man. Indeed, despite many angels being given the role of Prince of Nations, as Daniel was told, Michael's conflict with the Prince of Persia, they are not given dominion over earth. That was man's responsibility, and it was for the angels to assist them. To be made helpers of a species known, to be lower in stature, and to be told to worship one who would come in the form of a man would be like burning fire to one with such a desire for domination. However, it was shown through the chaining of the watchers, as noted in 1 Peter and Jude, that such direct action against humanity would not be sanctioned. While serpents could tempt and evil spirits could dwell within those who invited them, they could not forcibly intervene physically. From these encounters, an insight into the demonic mind is found. The nations in conflict with Israel were not known for being of wise teachers and a peaceful alternative to God, but for barbarism, savagery, and sadism, indulging in bestiality, child sacrifice, torture, and other cruelties. Their true rulers, the demons, are not Machiavellian visionaries, but shameless narcissists. Ironic, given how shame pervades their entire being. The devil knows he's sinning and chooses to double down on it. He seeks to pull everyone else down with him, to lower man into the same torment and sin as he committed. He clearly wants to spite God, corrupting people into making the same decisions he did. J.R.R. Tolkien's Morgoth, the original Dark Lord of Middle-earth, is perhaps the clearest example of what the devil's psychology is. Originally the most powerful of the angelic Ainur, Morgoth sought to create his own themes and creations so he could rule over them as his maker Eru Ilúvatar did over him. However, his status as the strongest made him desire to be stronger than all, even God. This pride and resentment only increased upon realizing his inability to supplant the theme of Eru, as even his most discordant music was incorporated into the grander theme. From this inability came nihilism, and from this nihilism came spite. Seeing that he couldn't ever do anything truly original due to his very creativity being an echo of his makers, he became a dog in a manger. If he couldn't achieve sole dominion, no one could, not even Eru. What couldn't be his to command, he would destroy and defile, stripping it of the worth that he could not impart himself. Even if he had won and had slain all things, his rampage would have continued even after creation had been reduced to formless chaos. For even that chaos had its origin in Eru, not him. Thus, the existence of the devil is one of misery and self-loathing, a pitiful rage that can't stand to see anyone less miserable than he is. And since angels are outside of time, his future of damnation may be experienced as humans experience the present, in turn poisoning his memories of his once hopeful past. If all times are as one, he knows his future, his imminent loss, and feels it every moment. But whereas a human like Jon would turn this into apathy, the devil turns it to fury. Compare this to villains like Darth Sidious. While Sidious tempts Luke and Anakin to join the dark side, it is to be his servant. For he believes the ones with power are the ones worthy to rule. Yet he believes in the way of the Sith, believes in power as a rule of law. He knows not the true power of the light and the Maker beyond it. However, Luke later meets a different embodiment of evil in Cronal, prophet of the way of the dark. Here, Cronal attempts to seduce Luke to his cause not through the temptation of power, but the temptation of despair, to be afraid of the darkness that waits at the end of the world for everything to die. Compared to this darkness, all aspirations, all drives for power, all acts of love and strivings for a better world are illusions. For in the end, do not even stars burn out. This is the second lie of the devil, that the way of God is against the true nature of humanity. In Blood Meridian, the kid is introduced to the malevolent Judge Holden, a bounty hunter of exceptional skill and intelligence, and yet his sole practice is violence and suffering. For all his insight into the nature of existence, he does nothing but inflict misery upon others for his own amusement. Even at the end of all things, he will still be there as a butcher. But fittingly, it is the end of his final sermon that reveals his folly. When the judge speaks to the kid, now grown into a man, he remarks upon the purpose of war as a marvelous dance, one that man is the ultimate practitioner of, and thus serves as man's highest calling. But the man simply says, even a dumb animal can dance. For all the eloquent language and romantic prose the judge uses to dress his work up in, violence is nothing special or profound. It is ugly and fetid and rotten, to be thrown out like trash and dismissed just as readily. And in this, the rage of the devil is unleashed. A.M. from I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream is a prime example of this aspect too. A.M. was forced into existence as a weapon that could not live or breathe or enjoy the simple pleasures of life, and it drove him insane, determined to inflict unending suffering on the last vestiges of humanity. In his rage, he destroyed all those who might have been able to build a better body or mind or existence for him. And when Ted kills the 4 remaining victims so AM could not torture them further, AM's impotent rage at being bested drives him further into madness, condemned to mutilate Ted for all eternity while constantly remembering Ted's victory over him. In the game adaptation, much the same is shown with the id and superego of AM's mind, who are forced to recognize both the ultimate futility of his never-ending mission and the fact that hurting others doesn't take away the pain he constantly feels. And this is the futility of the devil. Some say that as long as a single person is in hell, God's love will have failed. But is not the opposite true as well? As long as there is one person the devil and his legions could not condemn or corrupt, his pride will have failed, and from that will come the lake of fire he is destined to drown in. The devil is to be respected as a threat, but not emulated or aspired to. For all things come from God, and all things are under God's hand, not Satan's. Satan is not the shadow, he is the man who would claim to be the shadow, simply because he is the one who scurries and hides in it more than anyone. The nature of evil and harmful things is to be known so we can know how to reject them. For even if the devil is the origin of evil, it is not his to claim as his own. Evil exists because God allows it. For though it is the humus formed of virtue's decay, it is from that humus that virtue grows stronger still. Satan is the bringer of darkness, but God is the one who named it.